Now what I got here is another Controlline. It's a Brodak SV11 ARF. It's got that big Brodak heavy bell crank, 4-inch. The big thing is it has that bushing on the lead outs. Fit and finish is pretty good on it. Like, just about all the joints are quite well glued. Some of the ones in the fuselage I looked at, I'm gonna have to touch up a bit. Yeah, normally I use a KR system, the KR timer, but this time, just to avoid screwing around, I went all Brodak. So everything that Brodak recommended for this airplane is what I put on it. So it's got the timer adjustment here that you gotta cut the end off of, because even at that it sticks out quite a bit. And then their starter. First time in my life I'm going to use a arming switch. And I bought the Brodak motor. Timer and governor. The whole thing is going to be Brodak. So here's what they recommend for the governor timer. It's actually not just a timer. The governor is apparently built into this 60 amp Brodak speed controller. And I got their big old honking Brodak C4250 950 kV motor. So everything I bought here is exactly what they told me to use per change. See how that works, because I have been having a little bit of problem with those KRs. They've been screwing up on me last year. So a lot of guys like these. They're a lot simpler to set up. Everything's mechanical, so we'll see what happens. So what I gotta do now is start ironing stuff. I use first time I've seen a two-piece wing in a Controlline, and they're using these hardwood spars to put them together. So I guess the not very tight. Kind of loose actually. Oh well. We'll shim those probably with aircraft ply to get them to tighten up in those spar boxes there. Yeah, they are quite loose. But I was just going to say the epoxy will fill it, but that's a lot. But again, I got 30-second ply there. Glue it on the back of them, and I'll just tidy them up with some sandpaper. They'll fit. Easy fix. Okay, keep in mind it's made in China. Here's the hardware package. I haven't opened it yet. CA hinges. Yeah. CA hinges. I don't think so. CA hinges. I used to save them, but I just throw them in the garbage now. Yeah, especially on a Controlline, they're too stiff. Wheel pants are just plastic. I'm not going to open that up right now. I don't need to be losing shit. The typical ARF wheels, they're not too bad actually. They're light. The wheel pants are not too shabby. I think I'd give them a light sanding and maybe throw a coat of mist coat some white dope on there or something. I got the pole socket type connectors for the Pushrod system. I might toss that for Dubro stuff. Probably will. And this Pushrod tube, I'll take that out. It's fiberglass, but look how thin that is. That's pretty slimy. Man, it's stiff as hell too, which is good. But it's like really small diameter fiberglass rod. Not sure how they fasten that in there. It's an electric, so you're not going to be dealing with engine vibration and stuff, but I don't know. It's an ARF, but it's a nice airplane. It's a very nice stunt ship. So, what doesn't come in the kit is this bearing tab or mount, whatever you want to call it, and the brass bushing that's supposed to go in this elevator horn assembly. So how does one get on a bushing when it's already bent? Well, I tried it and it actually worked. So I just took the piece of brass tube and I split it, spread it open enough just so it was wide enough so I could squeeze it on over the wire. So it just popped in place, and I clamped it shut with the pliers, and now the open end I'll have towards the round end of this hinge, and there you have it. That should work. I'm thinking that bearing is probably supposed to be a little wider than it is, but it's definitely better than what was in the kit. I don't really see the point of making it too wide. It's actually perfect. Gently in the vise and cut a slot in. Not very good for your saw, but hobby shop's got lots of them. Probably should be, there we go. Now back to the bench. Take a small screwdriver carefully so you don't stab yourself. Spread that open a bit. But not wide open. Slick as a snot in a rooster's beak. So now it's got the bushing on it. They're probably supposed to be longer than that, but it just kind of dawned on me after I made one. But it'll do as far as I'm concerned. So what I end up doing with these spars is gluing on the top and the back a piece of 32nd inch ply, aircraft ply, to get that in there tight. Not screaming tight, but tight enough where you're gonna nice snug fit and you're gonna get a good bite with the epoxy. Okay, I used the horn that came with the kit just because I didn't feel like messing around and drilling new holes, and I got plywood in here as a reinforcement, so it seemed to be reasonably well made and it's distanced similar to the horn on the flaps, so I just went with it. And the holes are the right size for 440 screws. I'm gonna probably use my own pushrod tube on this instead of the one that came with the kit. We'll see. Old Dubros, I opened up all the hinge slots. They weren't bad. Everything was lined up pretty good, except for one. I think it was this one here. It wasn't quite centered, so I just took the saw and I enlarged the hinge slots. I just use this thing, X-Acto saw. So I use that to bring it back to the center line of the elevator, and then I just took a piece of scrap balsa and I glued that to one side of the hinge to bring it back up. On these bearings, I did end up removing the other ones. It was copper tube, you may have noticed, and I made new ones out of brass tube. Worked very well. The same idea. So got my little slot. Something you gotta notice in the plans if you're doing an ARF. Here's the top one here. It shows you what the top of the stab has got the colors on it. Your trim. The bottom is just plain white. But if you look in the photograph, it shows the horn sticking up. And he mentions down here, and he even has it underlined above my thumb there. Make sure it's facing downward, so I'd say, judging by this, they caught that after they glued it together. Yeah. It's not total disaster. All it means is your trim colors are going to be on the bottom of the stab instead of the top. Yeah. One thing I really got in the habit of doing, using my bare hand, is wiping that bench off. It's quite a few times, especially with ARFs or anything with a monocoated surface. Putting dings in the finish, you're gonna end up with all these little dents, and you find out it's because there's a little glue bob or little piece of balsa wood or something on the damn bench, and when you do any work or pressure on your piece, you end up with this ugly ding in your airplane before you even get a chance to whack it off the ground. So I always wipe this thing down, a ceiling tile, which is nice and pretty good work surface. And I'm not sure what this is. Got a gap here. It's almost like it's springing forward, so I may have to do some adjustments on these joiners. Put these two together without without the spurs, just goes together nice. So that's telling me this is needs a little adjustment. So it's springing forward. So I'll just take this down a little bit. So we may go. Before I went sanding away, I tried each one of these individually, and both of them are causing that little forward spring. So now I can take them out, and I'm using 80 grit here. Just remove a little bit of wood, not a lot. I noticed the bottom one didn't take much to get rid of the spring, so doing them individually. Just no, that's all it took. So I did make a new push rod out of piano wire to replace this setup, which just has a 90 going through the control horn on the flap. And I figured I better go with the piano wire and 2 Dubro 440 heavy duty ball links. So when I put this little spacer in, it'll pretty much line this up bang on, because despite the offset that the plans show, the horn that came with the airplane is right in the middle, and so it'll come right down the middle. It's not that big of a deal. I think this offset is actually supposed to be to bring that 90 over to the center. You see it's got a dog leg in it there. So we'll see how that works out. I'm going to do a dry run here and see how she looks. Because of the length of this thing, it'd be very easy for that epoxy to break free, considering it'd be acting like a hinge. So just took some balsa head kicking around and clamped it so that this thing can't flex back and forth and possibly break that glue joint that's on the steel and the wood inside. And it could happen pretty quick, pretty easy. So just a little something I figured might be necessary while I'm redoing the hinge slots here. Well, I got my flaps all done, as you can see. Control rods are all hooked up. Obviously I glued the wing on, just letting the epoxy dry. And I did decide to go with epoxy instead of medium CA that they recommend. It just, there's the wing saddle fits really nice on this one. And I just put the epoxy to her. I got styrofoam under the wing, put the fuselage on her, lined her up, did my trimming, glued it. Now she's sitting there drying. 15-minute epoxy. So, well, as you can see, moved along quite nicely with this. I ran out of battery and I just got busy and didn't bother videoing a lot of stuff. Not really necessary though. The front on the flap horn, I just used 2 Dubro heavy duty 440 ball links to replace the ones that came with the kit. And in the end, she's too narrow to really put a ball link in there. I did use the push rod that came with the kit. We'll see if that was a mistake or not. And because it was so narrow in there, what I ended up using was one of these safety lock 440 Dubro clevises. So it was very loose on the horn, so I just soldered brass tubing into the 2 bottom holes on the horn, and was actually be the 2 top ones that was upside down. And then I had to put another one inside that again. I soldered them in after scruffing them up and everything, and that allowed that pin to go in there nice and snug. It's loose, but it was just rattling around. I couldn't leave it like that. So that's the mods. I got the tail wheel on. I just CA'd that on, like they tell you to. I've never had an issue with that. But I did run into a gremlin here. As you can see, I got the motor in. I'm using everything I'm using here is Brodak. But you can See that nice opening in the bulkhead? Well, I had to put that in there, and it's apparently supposed to be there. So you'll end up needing one of these, and a flashlight in there sure shines. What you're supposed to do is you get the, when you put the motor in, you get the wires hanging out the air intake. Hooked everything up, got the motor direction, made sure everything worked, the system worked, which it does. Of course, I always have to reverse 2 wires. Then it tells you to push the whole schmalzel through there to like the speed controller, and hook up to your switch. That bottom piece was solid. They didn't have a hole in the bulkhead, so I drilled some holes in it, and I got a razor saw. These things come in very handy for the large X-Acto handle, and works great. In fact, I think I got a package of them up here somewhere. Yeah, that's in there. X215. And there's little saw blades. So I used that after I drilled 4 holes in it to kind of get a rough square. And I got a nice piece of hardwood dowel here, 1/2-inch hardwood dowel. And I use this a lot. This is one of my favorite sanding tools, and it's got 80 grit self-adhesive sandpaper on it. And I just use that to open it up and give you that very nice looking, tidy looking hole in that should have been there from the factory. So other than that, everything is going quite nicely. First time I ever used an arming switch, and I'm using genuine hemp to keep that from getting lost. And I guess the next step will be to see if my speed controller fits through there and hook my arming switch up to the speed controller. But she's coming along nice. Yeah, I'd do a little shimming on the back to get rid of a gap that was here. And then I just put a little bit of covering. The kit comes with spare covering for doing touch-ups, so I'll probably put a piece here and tidy up those. I always do. Put covering over those joints. Everything in the back, minor little sanding here and there, but they went together nice. Had to do a little bit of adjusting on the rudder to get it perfect. So I got that. I just CA'd the rudder on everything else. Everything else is epoxied, including this. Anytime you get gaps and stuff, I use epoxy. Did a little bit of shimming on this block here on the other side to get it to fit tight on the stab. The other thing I didn't care for is the landing gears of aluminum. And I did the same thing with my smoothie. Not this one, I bought that one. The primer I use on all aluminum parts. And I found even on the full scale planes, this Duplicolor self-etching primer works great. It's even the right color for airplanes. Get that military look to it, I guess. But yeah, it's really good stuff. I've had nothing but good luck with it. I used it on the instrument panel of my ultralight as well, and it works very, very, very well. Really etches into the aluminum. Then I put a coat of white primer over that. This is ready to be painted, so I'll give it 2 coats of white paint, and it really does transform. Tripping over there. Transform the look of the airplane. It makes, I always found it made quite a difference. Okay, something else I ran into. It's this the Brodak motor anyway. Probably be the same with any other motor. This thing was sticking out like a 1/4 inch too far to have a decent looking thing with a spinner. So I got 2 pieces of 1/8 inch ply and glued them together. Made a spacer in there. You got lots of room. There's lots of room behind that motor there to move it back. My CG was just a bit forward, so this will probably help. And putting a spinner on will probably just put it back where it was again, but there's tons of room in there anyway. And I made up, took a little bit of screwing around, but I just made it up so that it follows the same shape as the mount that's already on it, but it just goes back 1/4 inch. So now when I put my spinner on, there'll only be about 1/8 inch gap, or 1/16 inch gap, instead of that big honking 1/4 inch. So, and you can see those painted landing gear looks a lot better than the leaving on aluminum. I used the wheels that came with it. I did change the axles to Dubros. There's no instructions on how to put these things on. Man, as you can see, I didn't do a great job cutting that out. It's cutting the plastic. Your knife tends to run away on you, but luckily you won't be able to see that. And nice thing about the Dubros is they poke through the other side. So I put a piece of plywood inside just to give the axle, just gives a little more support. There's 2 plywood pieces. I didn't know what they were for, and I figured out that they go in there. So I get 2 1/8 spacers or wheel collars at the center of the wheel, and it worked out just right with the axle. So I widened out this plywood piece that glues onto that. You sand that up good before you CA it on, and then you just use one of the screws that came in the kit to screw it on. Have to drill that hole, of course, and they're on there pretty nice. But I didn't like the idea of just, you can see the plywood through the plastic. It's quite transparent. If I get fussy, I might take these off and paint them too. I do have a piece of scrap, so I'll see how the plastic deals with paint. My luck, could spray them and they don't shrivel up. But anyway, she just about licked. I thought I was done, but I'm not. The other thing I got to do is put a piece in. Thinking about putting a piece across here to mount this, but if you do, you can't get the motor out. So I'll have to figure out some way of mounting this up front. The battery fits in there nice, and it balances good all the way back. So there you have it. Spinner doesn't look too bad. A little bit more of a gap than I like, but hey, the spinner smartens it right up. Wheel pants, spinner, getting fancy here. So she is complete and ready to set up. So tomorrow I'll probably set the RPM as per the manual. I got a wooden 13.5 Falcon propeller on it, electric propeller. It's a sharp looking model. Not too bitchy to put together as an ARF. No, it's a lot less grief than I had with this thing. So next video, we'll be going around in circles.